Well, Stuart and I are inviting you into my garden for this Wednesday walkabout. So come on in and I'm going to show you a lot of things. I've actually been working, you guys. The weather has been simply beautiful for the past several days, and it's supposed to be like up in the 60s, isn't it, Stuart? I think most of the week. So I've been busy starting to clean up some leaves. I'm not cutting back a whole lot, but that reminds me to tell you, whenever you do a walkabout in your own garden, make sure you either have some snips, some pruners, some scissors or something, and then also optimally have some kind of basket or something that you can put all of your garden debris in, or weeds as you pick them. So come on in. And I'm just kind of going to give you an accounting of some of the things that I've been able to go ahead and do. And number one, I gave my table a good clean off. I put new candles in the candlesticks, and why that was kind of a priority for me is that a lot of times in the morning I come out while it's still dark, and if it's not so windy that I can sit out here, then I can light my candles. You guys know I love to light candles for my morning meditation. And you'll ask which kind I get, and I buy them in large quantities. I get these off of Amazon if I can't find them at Trader Joe's. I really love the ones from Trader Joe's, but they're a seasonal item. So I get these off of Amazon. I typically kind of don't like colored candles, so I always get them in cream color, ivory, or white. So now let's walk that way. I think I'm going to leave my basket here. So this area, if you followed me for any length of time, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to everybody who's really had a very, very rough winter. Some of you still are under 6 inches or more of snow, and I feel for you because we are starting to get kind of springy here. Between last Wednesday and this Wednesday, I think we had 100-degree temperature change. So welcome to Oklahoma. So this area, as I was saying earlier, if you followed me for any length of time, this area I call the Bistro Area. I divide my garden into garden rooms. For a long time, I had a montage of kind of some sickly ground covers and other things in here. I took it all out and I put down a kind of a composite of both brick and flagstone and gravel, and then I've got some different kind of ground covers kind of coming up around the perimeter. You can see here that another thing I did this week was I cut back all of my liriope, my monkey grass. I did that in the front and in the back. A little bit late for me. Normally I've already done it by now, but because it's been so cold up until now, I had to postpone it. So I've cut back all of that monkey grass, and it will put out really beautiful new shoots. Now you want to do that before too long, because the shoots will come up and out of the tufts of monkey grass. You'll see fresh new growth. If you wait to weed eat or cut back that monkey grass, you're also going to cut off the tips of that new growth, and then you've kind of marred all of those new blades for the remainder of the season. So if you haven't already done that, you want to do that pretty soon. I'm selectively cleaning up leaves from certain areas, but a lot of them I have left in place in case we have another really cold blast. But I have kind of tidied up this area. I've swept it. I loved the idea. I asked Hubs if he would help me, and we moved these large tree trunks, sections of tree trunks. I've got a double wide in between both chairs. That way it serves as a table for both of the people that sit on either side of it. And then I got some hyacinths. Sadly, a lot of the hyacinths that were starting to come up out of pots and even out of the ground, some of them, if they were out of the ground very far, this is the first time this has ever happened, but it did get down to -13 and a lot of them turned to mush. So I'm having to kind of supplement what I normally have with some more hyacinths. So I've got some there. The fragrance will kind of waft in this area. And then I also have started taking all of my smaller boxwoods. I've taken those out of where they were kind of in cold storage, and I've started sprinkling them around. Now, if it gets down to, you know, much below 24, 23, I might protect them again, but for right now, I think they'll be just fine. And that leads me to another tip. From now on, especially in the South, but really wherever you are, on a daily basis, you know, they say you shouldn't check your phone first thing in the morning, but I always do. I check my phone and I check the weather first thing in the morning, and I look 10 days out to see what the future holds for me, and if I'm going to have to protect any of my tender plants or anything that I have out that might succumb to cold conditions. So that's what I'm doing right now, is always checking 10 days out. So Stuart, if you'll follow me out into the garden. I had some other pots that are all kind of brown. They were hovering back against the fence to kind of stay protected, but I've brought them out so I can assess whether or not some of these things are going to make it, and whether or not they're going to have succumbed to that cold. But by bringing them out into the light and starting to water them, I'll have a better idea if they're going to perk up or not. This horrific golden fortuny, it's a variegated golden fortuny euonymus. You can't even tell what it is anymore because it got so cold bit, but I've already cut this back pretty hard. It's as tough as nails, and it will send out new growth very, very quickly, and this brown stuff will drop off and die off. And then, happily, you guys, hallelujah, as far as I can tell, all of my really large Green Mountain Boxwoods made it. These that are in the large pots. And I think one of the reasons they made it is because these are on the north side of my house, and this area for the most part stays in more shade for a greater part of the season, of the winter season. And so they don't kind of fluctuate back and forth between sun scald and shady conditions, and the temperature and the environment for them remains a little bit more static. Again, these are Green Mountains. I bought them on standard like this. These I did not create. I did not train them this way, but they have been here for, gosh, maybe 10 years now. I'm not really sure. Here's something else I'm going to tell you about tomorrow, how I fed my hydrangeas. But again, I'm going to tell you about that tomorrow, along with a bunch of other things. Or when I say tomorrow, I mean that you will see this coming weekend, excuse me, of things that even if you've still got 6 to 12 feet of snow on the ground, these are things you can do right now to get garden ready, and it'll kind of put you in the gardening spirit, in the spring spirit. So again, I've got more pots that are kind of finding their way out. I have a pot here that is covered with this chicken wire cloche. I get these from Gardener's Supply, and I'll put a link below. And you can see here that I've got a pot of tulip bulbs that are starting to come out. I brought these out about a week ago, but they are tempting to the squirrels. So I've got that to cover them as a deterrent, and I'm going to put them in this large urn along with some other annual flowers, maybe some pansies and things. But before I do that, some of you, if you follow me for a long time, you may recall that this got the drainage hole got plugged up, and lo and behold, it's plugged up again. But this pot is very, very heavy, so I'm going to have to get some help to turn that over and once again ensure proper drainage. Now, these are the hanging baskets that I put together last year. Stuart, would you remind me? We'll put a picture of what they looked like last fall. They were filled with tiny little pumpkins and things like that. And then I told you that I planted some hyacinths in these. Now, these did not turn to mush because these have been in the studio or in my husband's office. And I am getting ready. Won't this be pretty as a hanging basket? I'll give it a feed. And then some of these curly kales that I've got right here, I've got a couple of bare spots, and I'm going to tuck those in to give it a little bit of height. And then as soon as I get that done, I will hang both of these hanging baskets. There's also some heucherella in here, some purple heucherella, and hopefully it made it through the winter, and with a gentle feed, this will really start putting out fresh new growth and be very, very full. And I think it already looks pretty, and it will look much, much better after I give it a feed and fluff it up a little bit. And then I pulled out some more of these pots, and happily it looks like these boxwood all made it. And I did have some splaying on this old arbor vitae here, but it seemed to bounce back pretty well. So I was happy with that. Things are a little bit more resilient than we think they are when we're just in angst over all of the damage that's been done. So here is my kind of aggregation of all of these things that I'm going to tell you about on the things you need to be doing now a little bit later. Someone inquired about this red, it was a Southern Living red hydrangea, I can't remember the exact name, cherry something, that I underplanted with golden moneywort, and someone asked if I kept that in the pot over the winter. I did, and I think it will have made it just fine. I guess I told Stuart this is not just a walkabout, it's a talk about, because I do want to answer some of the questions you had in the last video where I was working on my front porch and you said, oh Linda, you moving all of those small pots and you need a gorilla cart or you need a wagon or something. Well, actually I have one, but I seldom use it for that purpose. The reason being I try to get in 10,000 steps a day. And that's a way that I can ensure that I get those steps in a pleasant way, especially on nice days like today. I don't mind making 50 trips back and forth with something light. I can really examine each plant in particular as I'm transporting it, and I can't easily do that as well when I've got a cart. So that's why but I appreciate you guys looking out for me and looking out for my back. I really appreciate that. So another thing that I'm doing is I'm starting to assess the integrity of all of my garden furniture and whether or not any of it needs replacing or fortification. Definitely that is something that I'm going to tackle this time of year, because once it gets to be spring, it's going to just really, really, really get crazy. And then over here, let me show you some of the things that have started to poke their heads out. Now, normally, this huge hedge of Nandina in the back. This is Nandina domestica, heavenly bamboo, and it is normally evergreen with beautiful red berries. And it normally stays evergreen all winter long and looks beautiful, and I can go into spring and it's a beautiful green backdrop. Not so much this year. So I'm going to go in there a little bit later and prune back some of the brown foliage. Some of them, if you look through this viburnum, you can see I've cut a lot of it back very, very drastically. Stuart, can you see back in there next to the gas meter? I've cut it back really drastically, and that's because I have to do some work on this lattice that is stained to match my fence and the trim on my house. And I know, because you ask all of the time, what is the color of that stain? If you follow me on Instagram and you look in my highlights in my stories, you will find an image, a screenshot of the top of the paint can that's got the formula on it and everything. But it's just a really deep kind of bronzy brown, bronzy blackish brown. And I like the colorful intensity of it. I've got a few bulbs coming up in here. Some of them, the tips got zapped. Another type of bulb, and you see here how dry it looks. I'm getting ready to come back in here and put down lots of compost and top this area with lots of compost. And I also this year, because these are all returning bulbs in here, I did sprinkle some bulb food on here. I believe, I can't remember exactly what brand it was. It might have been a Spoma, but really any kind of organic bulb food will work. And these are those gorgeous Kryptomeria. Now, that I did a topiary prune on the other day. And I've got them just sitting in here in these baskets elevated. These are weatherproof baskets, you guys. I can't wait to tell you about them. That'll be in another post. I can't tell you about them yet, but I will. And then in the potager, you can see all of the brown tipping. Now this is really interesting, you guys. I would say maybe 10, 12 years ago, Southern Living was out here shooting the garden, and they were also wanting me to demonstrate a certain kind of pruning shears. And it was in November. It was way too late in the season to be pruning it back. But I did a section of this nevertheless, just to demonstrate how to use those pruning shears. And it's this section right here. And that just shows how I kind of traumatized it by pruning it at the wrong time of year. And every year, this section is the most vulnerable to any kind of cold snap or heat snap or anything, this section right here. Now, obviously, when I get ready to prune the boxwood, I can shear that all off and it will be green just like everything else. But it's interesting how there can be long-lived results when you kind of prune at the inappropriate time. So when will I prune these? I will probably start pruning these about a week from now, and I will work from south to north, because the north is in more sun and it will put out new growth more quickly that potentially could be subject to a hard frost. So that's why I'm going to start on the south side. And then there's obviously lots of cleaning up to do. By now, I normally have already direct sown some lettuces, mesclun mix, some radishes, but I kind of don't want to do that until I really get a good prune on these, because it's going to be kind of messy and I need to give them a good feed too. So I'm not going to do that yet. And you'll notice that I put in place those two tutors on those arborvitaes, and about the same time I'll be pruning those. Looks very, very brown back there, you guys. It makes my back hurt just thinking about all of the work that's going to have to be done. But I'll be so glad to be out there and so curious to see what survived our record low temperatures and what didn't, that it will make the work go that much more quickly. And Stuart, if you'll just follow me around this way, I want to show a couple more things. Pretty soon, like I've already done it I've got some white chrysanthemums here, daisy chrysanthemums, and I've already started cutting back some of the dead foliage. And here I've got some, excuse me, Stuart, some sedum autumn joy right there. And I've started to cut it back. It's already putting out those darling little seafoam rosettes. So I'll start working on that kind of thing, and then I'll mulch over that as well. The hollies, I've said it earlier, but boy, the hollies took a hit this year. So I'll be giving these guys, my fingernail on my thumb has really been getting a workout, because I've been scratching so much bark to see if there's green underneath and whether or not I think something is alive or not. And these hollies, I'm just kind of waiting and seeing. I did bring out and bring to the back my rosemaries, and this one is showing a little bit of signs of spider mite, and this weekend I'm going to be telling you what I'm going to be doing about that. And I've pulled out all of my small boxwood to start staging my little boxwood theater, at least here for now. And then I've got a bunch of baby little boxwoods here that came from starts, and I'm going to plant them all in these same size pots, because I want them all to be very symmetrical and all the same size and look very orderly. So that is an easy something that I can do. And then let me show you just for this last thing. You can see I've still got on my driveway, let me show you my uglies there by my trash cans. I've got lots of pots of bulbs there that I will place out and about in the garden. See, you guys, I show you my warts and all. And then I'll tidy up my driveway. But really why I wanted to come over here was show you, it was up against that little fireplace there. That's where all of my tiny little boxwood I had kind of sheltering in place there. I had a bunch of leaves blown on them and they made it through fine. That pot is cracked, so I need to repot it. And then over here I just have all sorts of little hyacinths and things that are coming back up. So whenever I buy hyacinths or miniature daffodils or things of that nature from my nursery or garden center, and I'll have them in the house, once they are finished blooming, I do not discard those bulbs. It doesn't necessarily work for tulips, but for hyacinths and daffodils it works great. Then I'll come back and I put them in what I call, this is my fish pond, which is an homage to Thomas Jefferson, but it's also my minor bulb garden. So that's kind of what's going on here. This used to be a beautiful branch that was damaged in the ice storm, but I left it here because I'm hoping it will put out some leaves at the end. And this is also the branch that I like to hang my hanging baskets from, so I can see them from my kitchen window. And then over here I've just got more pots of bulbs protected with those chicken wire cloches. So I hope you guys like this walkabout. Spring is definitely on the horizon. We were commenting on the birds. Again, it's going to be up in the 60s to maybe even the low 70s this week. So it's time to get your garden on, you guys. Grab those clippers, go out into the garden, and it's going to be ready, set, go before you know it.